everyone, Emily May here, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. And I have a question for you all. Do you like going on vacation? And if you do, are you not a fan of hotels, or do you think Airbnbs are too expensive? Well, if your answer was yes to either of those questions, or both, then camping may be the solution for you. Well, first, if you don't know what the word camping means, here's a definition. Now, where you would go camping is called a campground. And a campground is where my family likes to go to when we go on vacation or we just need a place to crash after doing a daytime activity. For example, my family and my boyfriend and I, once it was over, stayed at a campground on the weekend that I graduated from college. So my family owns a camper. Here's a picture of it. So that means when we go to campgrounds, we can park in sites that have water, electric, sewer, and cable. Now, most campgrounds have other options if you don't have a camper. Most places will have tent sites and cabins for you to rent. But my family prefers to go camping in our camper. It's something that I have been doing almost my whole life. We originally had a tent, and then a pop-up, and then we've had a couple campers, but the one that we have now is the one that we'll probably have for the remainder of my parents, and then maybe even my life. So, with the fact that my family owns a camper, and I've been camping for most of my life in whatever form that took, we have been to a surplus of campgrounds. So for today's video, I am introducing a new series to the channel where I can share my personal experiences at said campgrounds. And just a disclaimer, none of this is sponsored. I am here to tell you my honest opinion, whether it's positive or negative, or maybe even both. But my overall hope for this series is to give you, my viewers, an idea if you would like to go to these places or not. So in today's video, I will be specifically talking about a campground called Ocean View Resort in Ocean View, New Jersey. My family was just there from June 15th to the 19th, but we've been there plenty of times before. If you want to know where this is located, if you've heard of it, it's kind of near Avalon and Sea Isle City, both of which are in New Jersey. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So first and foremost, this place is huge. It's one of the biggest campgrounds that I've ever stayed in, at least that I can remember. I don't know if they're necessarily called sections, but it's essentially split up into two sections. The front part of the campground is where you'll find all the tent sites, all the pop-ups, and then there are some pull-throughs, but you won't see very many big campers. And then the back section, where my family stayed, has a name, and it's called Greenbrier. And we think that that part of the campground came first. And that's because it's pretty secluded. There's a long entrance to get back there. Now, obviously, there are back roads from other parts of the campground, but the way that we have to go in there, and the way that people normally go in there when they have their campers, is a long road with woods on either side. And also, a lot of the seasonals back there look pretty old compared to the ones in the front. They just have a more classic vibe to them, if you know what I mean. So, the campground as a whole is big, but I also feel like the individual sites are spacey. So it makes it easier to pull in the camper and set up, but I also like having breathing space. With the fire pit and the picnic table, it's nice to be able to walk around in your own site. It doesn't really feel like a cramped-in yard. It feels like your own personal space. So the only thing that I didn't like about our specific site was that it was on a corner, so you could see a lot of cars going by and they can see you, but it wasn't terrible because we were in Greenbrier. So another thing that I really like about this campground is that there is lots to do. Now my family, we mostly use the campground as our hotel. We essentially use it as a place to just crash for the night because we're really busy during the day. But if there's ever a time we don't feel like going to the beach or going out in town, mostly on Saturdays when it's nuts, it's nice that there are things to do inside the camp. For starters, there's a whole ass lake. Now it's not huge like you'd expect out in nature because it is man-made, but I still think it's nice. Half of it is for swimming, and then the other half is for fishing and then paddle boating. It's a very nice lake when there's not band-aids floating around in it. But if you don't feel like going in the lake, they also have a pool, and theirs is saltwater. So I get it, you can be annoyed with a saltwater pool if you were just in the salty ocean. But I feel like it keeps it cleaner, and I feel like it's safer for kids versus chlorine. And then off to the side, they also have a splash park for little kids. It's very cute seeing all the tiny tots running around, having a grand old time on the pirate ship that's back there, and then they also have water that just dumps on you. If you've ever been to a water park, I think they call it the bucket, so it fills up and then there's a countdown and then it tips over. I bet if we had gone here when I was a wee lass, I probably would have had a blast. So, if you don't feel like getting wet, they also have a bunch of other things to do too. They have the camp store you can go into, there's an arcade, there's an ice cream stand, there's a snack bar by the lake, there's a few other ponds where you can fish at, there's tennis courts, and pickleball, and there's mini golf. There may or may not be basketball nets. I don't remember. I can fact check myself in the future. There's also playgrounds, and then occasionally they'll have hay rides. When they're more fully staffed, they have a tram car like you would see at the boardwalk going around the place. You can always tell it's coming when you hear screaming kids. And there's a distinct bell. I think it's a bell. So, those are all the activities that are there all the time, or at least they're open when they have all their staff. But another thing that they do that I think is pretty cool is that they do themed weekends. So, for example, when my family was there, they had a pirate weekend. So they had a bunch of themed activities for the kids and they decorated the whole place. And I remember one time when my family was there, it was timed pretty good. I'm very happy for my sister because she's obsessed with this holiday. But one time we were there and they did a Christmas in July themed activity weekend. Because yes, July 25th is Christmas in July if you've never heard of that before. Now unfortunately, my family will not be there this Christmas in July, which, sorry, Nicole. But I just think it's cool that they do that. It gives the kids something else to do, especially when the pool is closed and you're able to go into the lake. And also, this is temporary, but they're currently renovating the playground that is by the lake. So we talked about the spaciness of this place, and then what you can do there. Now, this last category that I'd like to talk about doesn't really seem like it would be important to the opinion that I'd form about this place, but they're just little nice touches that just elevate the niceness of this place. You'll know what I mean when I get into it. And that is the aesthetics. So, I like being in nature. I like going on hikes and just looking at our beautiful world around us. And this place has a lot of natural scenery. So like I said, there are multiple ponds. The lake, even though it's man-made, it's still a pretty view, especially when it's the sunset. I'll insert any photos that I have taken in the past of it. And then another thing is that since you're in a campground, there's no light pollution. So there's always a beautiful, breathtaking view of the stars. Now, you can get that at almost any campground, but at Ocean View, my sister and I like to do it by one of the ponds in the very back of Greenbrier, and it's so stunning. And then another aesthetic is that this place is clean. Like, you're gonna find litter everywhere. it's inevitable. People are rude. People don't care everywhere you go. But this campground, it's pretty clean. Like, there isn't much trash anywhere. People don't tend to leave it around everywhere. People tend to pick up after themselves while they're here. And also, the bathrooms are lovely. They don't smell, and you can tell that they're cleaned daily. Now, I know staffing can be an issue, so I don't really put anything against the workers if there's only 1 or 2 people cleaning them. I try to forgive them a little bit for it. But at this place, there are a lot of bathhouses, and they're all nice. They're all very clean, and I appreciate that. Now, this last bit about it being clean, this campground actually recycles. And when a location does not have recycling, it bothers the crap out of me. I hate throwing away recyclable materials. And this place has a bunch of recycling bins. They essentially look like dumpsters that are next to the dumpsters. So anytime somewhere has recycling bins, it automatically boosts my opinion. So the last part to this category of aesthetics, it's not necessarily a physical aesthetic. I just didn't know where else to fit this, but I like this location too for the fact that the people there, so like the other people that camp there, are pretty respectful and they're pretty friendly. So anytime you walk or drive by a campground, if anyone's outside, they'll wave to you. You wave to people that are on their bikes or walking along the paths. People are generally respectful of your space and your things. Kids will be kids, so you can expect some slight rudeness there, but they're still learning. But the parents are usually good at telling them how to change their behavior so they can be more respectful. And speaking of children, there's no screaming children running around in the middle of the night. Because I've been to some campgrounds where parents, I know you're on vacation, so I give them some leeway, but I still don't think your 3 to 5-year-olds should be up till midnight. And if they are, I especially don't think they should be running around the site screaming their heads off. But I just appreciate that parents have a better control of their kids, at least of the ones that go to this campground. Because I don't know what it is, but just at some other locations, adults just don't care. They don't care about their kids' behavior, and then they don't care about their. So the fact that we weren't woken up in the middle of the night by screaming children, and everybody there in general just seems to be nice, it definitely gives me a more positive view of this place. Alright, so I am going to give this place a rating, but before I do that, I just want to quickly go through some pros and some cons. So for the pros, some of them you've already heard, and some of these will be new. But for the pros, like I said before, there's a lot of space. Because of that, it makes it pretty easy to park and set up our camper. To be fair, our family has this process down pat, so even if it was a crappy site to pull in, the setup probably wouldn't be that bad either way. It's just when you have more room, it makes your life easier. And speaking of room, they're pretty wide paths. There's a lot of different diverging paths that you can take to get to all the different locations. There's plenty of room for you to walk or bike. I feel pretty safe when I go out at night. And then with that too, I also said this before, people there are pretty friendly. It doesn't feel like I'm going to get murdered at night, which is nice. So I've definitely been to some campgrounds where not necessarily the people, but some locations within it, it felt like I was going to get murdered. But there weren't really any places or people like that there that gave me that vibe. So that's also good. And then also, it was clean. The pool was clean. Definitely been to campgrounds where they don't seem to clean the pool. So it's one thing if there's nature crap in there, whatever, but it's another to have human crap in there. Now, these two things I did not talk about before, but I think they're pros. So directly across from the campground, there's a farm stand selling fresh vegetables, jams, preserves, and fruit. And I am a stan for fresh fruit and veggies. My sister could destroy an entire veggie platter, while my boyfriend could destroy an entire fruit. So it's nice that there's New Jersey vegetables and fruits directly across from it. It's easy access. So we can walk or bike there. And then the second one is that there's a rail trail nearby. So a rail trail is essentially a safe path for you to walk or bike on, that it's a straight path and it's to keep you safe from the roads. There's actually one near my house right down the road. But I like this rail trail because for the most part it's shaded. It sucks where it's not. But I like that you have another option to bike around so you don't have to go on the busy Jersey roads or around the campground if you're tired. One way is usually uphill anyway, so you get a pretty good workout whether you're leaving or coming back to the campground. And then you have a pool to jump into. So that's a win in my book. So for the cons, I did not really talk about these before. These are kind of new things that I still thought were important enough to bring up. They just didn't really fit in with what I was talking about before. So the first con, I have three, is that this place is far-ish from the beach. You have to drive 20 plus minutes to get to anywhere. So yeah, there are grocery stores in town, but if you want to go to the beach or the boardwalk, you're going to have to drive a little bit. I've been to campgrounds where it's only like 10 minutes out from the beach. And it takes longer to get to the beach if you also happen to drive behind someone going slow as fuck, or you happen to get stuck at every red light, which happens to us a lot more than I'd like it to. So another con of this place is that there's poison ivy everywhere. Everywhere you look in any of the wooded areas, there's poison ivy or oak. I don't remember the difference. And if you're like me, you get poisoned very easily. So you don't even want to look at it, or else you'll get a rash. At least that's what my sister likes to joke about. But yeah, when we were setting up, I had to be very careful, and I couldn't even do some of the tasks because we were dangerously close to the poison. Or we were dangerously close to the edge of the trees where there were poison bushes. So if you're not careful, or if you're not watching your kids, you or they could very easily get a rash. And I also personally just dealt with a very horrible poison outbreak from doing yard work at my house. I had to get steroids for it. I did not want a repeat of that experience. Now the third con is that some of the staff there can be unnecessarily strict. Now a lot of them are older folks, or my family thinks that the reason why they acted like the way they did is because they were on a little bit of a power trip. So when we got there Saturday morning, check-in wasn't till 1, and we got there a few hours early. So like, fair enough, I guess we'll go and do something in the meantime. And luckily they had a seasonal / camper showing, so we were able to do something to buy us time. But then as it got closer, aka 12:50 or 12:55, they still weren't letting people in. They would not let you in until it was 1 o'clock. And I'm like, okay, you're 5 minutes early. What's the big deal? Just let them in. There's really no difference. If the site is open and available for them, because it's preserved for them, because they said they were coming today or that Saturday, then I don't see the difference in letting them go. And I don't necessarily remember every other incident off the top of my head, but there were other times where we felt like they were being a little snooty about things. It wasn't a huge deal. It was just an annoyance. Something that made us go, really? That's what we're doing? But I'm sure you'll find people like that everywhere. So, like I said, it wasn't that big of a deal. Alright. Those were the pros and the cons. Now it's time for my overall rating. And for this ranking system, I will be doing it out of 10. So, Ocean View Resort in New Jersey, for me, gets a score of 8 out of 10. And so there we have it. We're starting this series off with a high score. I do genuinely believe this is one of the best campgrounds, at least in New Jersey, that I've stayed at. I am always happy to hear that my family booked another trip here. I will always, always, always appreciate a well-maintained and non-cluttered campground that has stuff for their campers to do, even if I may not be the target audience for some of them. And just to reiterate a point from before, I was not paid to say good things about this place. And speaking of money, I also don't know how much everything costs. That would be up to you to look into how much a site would be depending on what you plan to camp in. But I will leave a link to their website in the description down below if this is something that you would want to research. But anyway, as a whole, I thought this and any of the other times that I've been to Ocean View was a pleasant experience. I recommend this place to any future campers. And on that note, it seems like we've reached the end of this review. And I'm curious, if any of you have been to Ocean View, what was it like for you? Feel free to share down in the comments down below. And that is all I have for you today. So please be sure to subscribe and to click that notification bell. Because my life is crazier than I am, I still don't have a set schedule. Just be on the lookout for new videos. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.